House of Representatives pushes for more rail infrastructure across the country. House investigates leakages in government coffers due to non-remittance of remitter-generated revenues. And security chiefs identify lack of funding as major challenge in the fight against insecurity. Thanks for joining us on You and Your Reps. I am Victor, as welcome. The House of Representatives says more rail lines are needed across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country to facilitate movement of people, goods and services. Now, this is sequel to the adoption of a motion for the extension of existing rail lines.
It's the last plenary for the week and infrastructure-related matters dominate proceedings.
Mandates the Committee on Power to investigate the abandonment of the Shagamu IPP project and the withholding of 2 MVA transmitters by the Transmission Company of Nigeria.
Urge the Federal Minister of Works to prioritize the construction of the Western Bridge on the dualized Maiduguri-Kano Expressway in Berishek Town, Borno State.
Declare state of emergency on federal infrastructure in Basadikina Federal Constituency of Kogi State.
On transportation, lawmakers acknowledge the importance of existing rail lines, but advocate extension of the rail infrastructure to crisscross geopolitical zones.
All the federal government will extend the rail line link to the south-south and the southeast, north-central, as well as the northwest geopolitical zone of Nigeria. If northeast is cut off, it will have a very serious impediment.
4 bills passed second reading seeking the establishment of the Landscape Architects Registration Council of Nigeria, Agricultural and Energy Technical Institute, Nasarawa Egon, Federal Medical Center, Ugwaji, Enugu State, and Federal College of Agriculture and Forestry, Ise, Ekiti State.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Public Accounts to investigate non-remittance of revenues generated through the remitter platform, which has led to substantial revenue leakages in government coffers. Now, following a motion jointly sponsored by Representatives Jeremiah Umaru and Jafaru Gambo, the House notes that the rate of revenue shortfall is worrisome, despite the introduction of the remitter system.
Since 2015, Remitter, a financial service platform, was adopted to serve as a gateway for the Treasury single account of the federal government to block revenue leakages. The Green Chamber is, however, worried about non-compliance with the standard operating procedures leading to revenue shortfalls.
The proliferation of accounts has moved from deposit money banks to Central Bank of Nigeria, allowing MDAs to create multiple sub-account, thereby negating the TSA policy of the federal government.
The need to construct pedestrian bridges along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was among several infrastructure resolutions.
Pedestrian bridges have been neglected by stakeholders, and the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway has become a death trap.
Ungoverned spaces, as well as inadequate funding, manpower and military hardware are some of the operational challenges militating against the progress of the security forces in the fight against insurgency and other forms of criminality in the country. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, and other service chiefs stated this when they appeared at the House of Representatives for sectoral debates on the security situation in the country.
The security chiefs filed into the Green Chamber apologizing for their absence at plenary last week. Speaker Tajuddin Abbas explains the rationale for commencing the sectoral debates with the security sector.
It is prioritized in our legislative agenda that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. We are here not to reprimand, but to understand you better.
The service chiefs highlight counter-insurgency operations to dislodge and neutralize criminals around the country.
Prior to 2022, Nigeria was listed as one of the pirate-prone countries in the world. But based on the activities and efforts of the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Maritime Environment was delisted from that list, and Nigeria is now considered a piracy-free nation.
We conduct
intelligence-based operation to act as stopgap and to ensure that there's no disruption in the troops currently deployed and forwardly poised to combat threats.
They are, however, frank with operational challenges, which they say require more funding and parliamentary approvals.
These include the rising cost of aviation fuel. As you are aware, the budget was predicated on about 365 naira to 1 liter of aviation fuel. But right now, as of today, the cost of aviation fuel is about 1,150 naira. So that has created a lot of challenges for us because we can only operate when we can fuel the airplanes.
The manpower in the police today is grossly inadequate. Even the criminals know that. The United Nations ratio of 1 to 400 is not attainable in Nigeria as of today, because the ratio in Nigeria is 1 to 1,000, which suggests that we have to double the manpower in the police and over.
There are areas that I most sincerely solicit your support. These are briefly highlighted. Just in a brief, creation of defense and security intervention funds. The National Assembly should initiate a bill for legislation that will cater for extra budgetary allocation for the armed forces and police. This could be by requiring corporate organizations such as telecommunication airlines, communications airlines, oil companies, and similar others to designate at least 2% of its annual profit for defense and security purposes. We feel that will complement, because the budgetary allocation cannot actually give us what we require.
What have you done to leverage on the experience and knowledge of our retired personnel?
Which measures, both short and long term, are they taking to combat the situation?
If there is any plan for them to use some political solutions to solve some of these politically motivated security challenges.
Deluge of questions from lawmakers leading to a closed-door session with the security chiefs. At the Committee on Supply, the House considered and approved the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework preparatory to the presentation of the 2024 appropriation bill.
As the Yuletide approaches, major roads across the country are expected to become busier. What is the state of the roads? We engaged Chair of the House Committee on Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, FERMA, Adere Musa. A structural engineer by training, the member representing Ibarakwa East, Ido Federal Constituency of Oyo State, also weighed in on the debate over asphalt or concrete for road construction.
I think this will be the first time in the last maybe 20, 30 years now that a professional will be doing an oversight work for FEMA. This agency, FEMA, is equally under Ministry of Works for the first time as well in about maybe 20, 30 years as well, that this ministry will be supervised by a qualified civil engineer for the first time. Meaning that whatever I'm going to do in FEMA is already on the right path or in the right direction. Why? Because when you're discussing with people who understand the language, we're discussing with people who understand what you want. We're discussing with people who can interpret what you are saying. It's different from somebody who is waiting for third-party interpretation. So that solves our problem. Going forward, FEMA, my focus as the chairman of FEMA in this 10th National Assembly is, number one, to refertilize FEMA. Number two is to see how we will reposition FEMA for delivery Three, is for us to see collectively how FEMA will be re-engineered, and finally to have a new FEMA. We have FEMA yesterday, we have FEMA today, and we are looking for a new FEMA. Part of the 14 legislative agenda, we look at the global road network in Nigeria. We'll review it as a whole, as a committee. Then we'll call for baseline for FEMA as an institution. Let them come up holistically, look at the entire road network in the country and x-ray, and let us know exactly what are the challenges that we have road by road in as far as the nation is concerned. Not only that, when you look at FEMA, if you tell anyone about FEMA now, I'm talking about FEMA today, it calls for concern. We address the issue of transparency, performance-based FEMA. That's the type of FEMA that we're looking forward to see, where Nigeria will be able to get value for money, where procurement processes will address the expectation of Nigerians, where roads construction, whether maintenance or rehabilitation or total reconstruction, will be given to people who have capacity to deliver such services efficiently and qualitatively. Not only that, we are going to look at FEMA and see how we help FEMA to address the current challenges, because one of the major challenges of FEMA is funding. I've been able to come up with about 22 funding approach that we're going to look at as a committee. All these 22 funding patterns, we're going to introduce them when the act is reviewed. Even the current act that we're having, we have funding that is coming from federal government directly in form of allocation to them, which is what they use annually. Two, they have concession arrangements. In the act, no single road has been concessioned. FEMA has no capacity to complete or to fix. Even Federal Ministry of Works, they don't have that capacity to fix Nigerian roads. The concession opportunity is there. They've never used it, taken advantage of it. Okay? Not only that, FEMA has the opportunity to construct toll gates for all FEMA roads, all national roads, all our federal roads across the country. These toll gates ought to be a very good source of income for FEMA. I can assure you, if they have access to this type of funding, it will go a long way for them to be able to efficiently deliver their function. When you look at FEMA has the opportunity to take about 5% of fuel tax for the purpose of implementing, fixing Nigerian roads. FEMA hasn't gotten any access to all this funding. They kept on struggling. We don't have 10 contractors in the country today, 10 conservatively, who can do rigid pavements efficiently in a way that will be able to deliver this kind of quality that I believe the minister will be looking at. We don't have it. That's number one. Number two, the training for you to be able to do rigid pavement is deep. It's unlike asphalt, where you just go and call people, bring paver. When the paver is not working, use your tipper, spread the asphalt, put all the laborers on site, let them spread the asphalt and bring your rollers and begin to roll. That can be conveniently handled. Everybody cannot handle concrete. So in other words, the first responsibility of the minister will be to go and look at how he will put people together, structure together among Nigerian contractors. I'm not talking about international companies now, because when you say you want to use rigid pavement, the only people that can deliver it based on the expectation of the minister, that will meet his expectation, I believe, are only multinational companies for now. Our people need to migrate from asphalt that they are used to concrete by way of training. Concrete is difficult to handle for a non-professional. Even as a structural engineer, from my experience, I have discovered from various project managements that only few contractors can deliver quality concrete in this country. And I challenge anybody that has any dispute on that. Even common petrol stations, domestic compound road network that people are doing, go and check it. They can't fix 500 meters road with concrete. If you want to migrate from asphalt to concrete, you call for what we call holistic review of the existing facility that we have. Why is it not functioning? If you use iron to do road, that doesn't make the road to be good. That doesn't make the road to be durable. Durability of road is a function of, number one, quality control. Number two, quality assurance. Talking about quality control and quality assurance, those are things that will guarantee the success or failure of your road infrastructure or of your any projects that you plan to do. So it's not about we want to use concrete in order for the road to be durable. No. If you give concrete road job, that is rigid pavement for people who are used to flexible pavement installation to execute, I can assure you, you end up wasting your money. You can easily manage and maintain asphalt if there is failure in the execution of the job. You can't manage concrete. Removing concrete that failed is another contract. A major contract entirely. And I'm sure the president and the minister will look at the position of whether pavement, whether rigid or flexible pavement globally before it will be adopted. You need to discuss it. Call all the stakeholders. Let Council of Registered Engineers, Nigerian Society of Engineers, even Nigerian Institute of Architecture, NIA, NIQS, let them come together. Challenge them to come up with ideas. Challenge them to go and come up with blueprints. When they come up with blueprints of their field professionally, invite qualified consultants. Review all the consulting firms that we have in the country. Let them come up with proposals. Continue with what you are doing currently, which is asphaltic pavement, while you are reviewing all their study, whatever their proposal is. It's not something that you wake up today, I want to start doing reinforced concrete, except you want to give job to only multinational company, which will not address the primary objective of this administration. All our infrastructural development, maybe 40-60 or 60-40 international, multinational company and local engineering company. If you don't promote indigenous company to execute our infrastructure, it means all the money you will disburse will be taken out of the country. It won't serve the purpose. And our people are not ready. I say it loud and clear. They've not been trained. Rigid pavement is not for everybody.
There are several kinds of legislative committees, but one cuts across both houses in a bicameral legislature like Nigeria's. Now, which is it and how does it work? This is what Chair of the House Committee on Rules and Business, Francis Waive, is about to tell us.
We have the Senate and the House of Representatives. So every bill, for it to become law, must be passed by both chambers. But many times when they are passed by both chambers, there are some variations, some differences here and there. You take the PIB as it then was, for example, Petroleum Industry Bill. Whereas one house was passing 3% on a particular issue, another house was passing 5% for a particular issue. So when you get to such a stage, you set up a conference committee. A number of representatives will come from the House and then a number from the Senate. So they meet as a conference and they look at both versions. They don't introduce anything new. They take it, the clauses where there are variations, and they decide to accept either the one of the House or the one of the Senate. They don't introduce anything new. Conference committee has no right to introduce anything new.
This week on You and Your Reps, the committee segment plays host to Chair of the House Committee on Health Institutions, Amos Magaji. He represents the Zango Kataf Jaba Federal Constituency of Kaduna State.
This committee drives basically the secondary and tertiary healthcare of this country, and one of the things that we are trying to see is to make sure that the hospitals are equipped. And mind you, this is a peculiar period for the nation where you have shortage of human resource for health. I had a meeting with the committee of CMDs, their ESCO, and then one of the key area challenges they brought here were, one of them, was issue of manpower. I had the privilege of visiting Lagos University Teaching Hospital, and they actually showed me some wards that have been closed because there are no manpower. The high cost of dollar is actually now making many people not to be able to travel abroad to access health care. So we can take advantage of that as a nation and make sure that our healthcare system is improve health delivery, so that people will now build trust in the system. Nobody has the right to say, don't leave the country. So if they must stay, what are the plans on ground to make them stay? You understand? We're still in a country whereby today you hear health workers are on strike, tomorrow you hear that ASU are on strike. So we need, as a people, we need to sit down to look at how do we tackle the issue of human resources? How do we make them confident? How do we attract the best and keep the best? How do we make people happy working? How do we make, and there are several things that will make somebody happy working. If you are a medical doctor right now, after graduation from the university, and you have worked for 20 years, and up to now you have not even been able to build a 3-bedroom apartment, whether you like it or not, you now begin to look at how many years do I have again to work. You begin to look at it and say, okay, the 10 years remaining, the 15 years remaining, I better put down my retirement plans. So you begin to see money now forms the top agenda in decision. So you begin to see people now begin to make only financial decisions. Even when where they are going, they will be treated as slaves. People will just say, okay, even if I'll slave myself for 20 years, let me slave myself for 20 years and have a roof over my head and be able to pay my children's school fees. So if we really look at some of these things and say, okay, if somebody begins to work now, does not need to bother himself about, housing, does not need to bother himself about education, in which I think the president has started this issue of student loan and so on. If it can be extended and then health insurance can be given for every Nigerian, even we in politics will be happy. Many of our teaching hospitals right now are still crying on issue relating to medical equipment. Many hospitals don't have MRI machine. MRI, you go to teaching hospital and teaching hospital does not have MRI machine, CT scan. So these are basic. And then you now also look at power is also another serious problem that they are faced. These are equipment that are very sensitive to power, and then many of them have to be using diesel to power their hospitals. Yeah, that's a very big problem. Another serious problem they are having is outsourcing. Maybe in your budget in a year, in a month, you are giving 5 million or 10 million for outsource. I mean, outsource are people like security, cleaners, and then other workers in the hospital. Now you may have to pay like 30 million every month for those workers, and then what is budgeted for you is probably like 10 million. So you see, you'll be running the hospital under a lot of stress. So funding for health must be improved. Do you understand? Then also equipping. Many of the hospitals that we have today are old, are aging, and then they need to be renovated, they need to be expanded, they need to be looked into. And then just yesterday, I look at the CMDs and I was telling them, I say, can we look at specialization? That, okay, when you go to ABU, if you have a renal problem, anywhere in the country, when you go to ABU, even though it's a teaching hospital, but it is known with treating renal cases. Okay, can we say now if you go to University of Port Harcourt, they are very good in brain surgery. Now, you begin to see people will not be running, okay, if I have renal issue, instead of me to run to India or Egypt. Recently, Nigerians, especially we from the north, are beginning to troop into Egypt for medicals. And we can attract that number of people. If the amount they are spending outside are being spent in our system here, it will not only develop our medical profession, because whether I like it or not, the teaching hospitals are also research institutions. So when the more cases you deal with, you're also, understudying, you're also performing research on this thing. So we'll have intellectual property and we'll retain our intellectual property. Aside that, you discover that we will also have the amount spent outside, you will spend less to develop our system. And let me tell you, sir, no matter how rich you are, even if you have a chopper parked here, there are critical emergency if there are no hospital near you, no matter how much you have. It cannot, before you reach Mediterranean Sea, the person would have died. So we just have to look at health as a priority in this nation.
Indeed, health is wealth. That's another one to keep an eye on. Thanks for keeping us company. I am Victor, as well. See you next time.